Hello and welcome. Are you a shy and introverted person who struggles to make their voice heard? Susan Heaton Wright was a shy and introverted person in school. How did Susan become an award-winning international opera singer and superstar communicator? I will let Susan tell her own story. Before watching this video, if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to my channel and like this video. See you at the other end.
Okay, so I have my own company, Superstar Communicator, and as with the pandemic, for everybody, our lives were impacted, but also for many people, and I'm sure many of your listeners, you were impacted either by losing your job or your income was impacted. And certainly that was the case with me. In March 2020, things suddenly changed. And John, you're going, yes. And I suddenly saw this fantastic year that I was going to have in my diary suddenly disappear. I had one gig that just wouldn't be cancelled, and that was one very locally to do a masterclass for a lovely organisation within the insurance industry. But a week before, it became apparent that some people didn't want to go to the venue. They were told by their companies that they shouldn't go because of the virus. But the organizer didn't want to cancel because he'd paid for the space in the hotel, quite rightly, and the croissants. But then 2 days beforehand, they said, we're going to have to cancel this. And so I said, why don't we do this virtually? And we've never met, John. Well, I spent 2 days and nights putting together content so that it would be experiential and engaging in a slightly different way. But something happened because it did go well and it fulfilled a brief in these crazy times. And so I started reaching out to other organizations saying, look, I've done this for this organization. I've got a couple of other courses that could help in the short term. And basically, I contacted lots and lots of people. And that started my new style of business. That kept me going, and that kept me getting up in the morning because I knew that I needed to deliver one. And as a result of that, I was introduced to other people, and I also offered some for free to certain organizations to raise my profile and was referred for paid work. And before I knew it, I was doing things in the United States and in the Far East and for EMEA. And in the last year, I delivered over 160 virtual workshops to over 55 countries, attendees from over 55 countries.
That's great content, Susan. Thank you very much for that detailed answer. And I must say that what you did is you drew on all your experience from your past life and you thought on your feet and you set up these online or virtual courses, and you did not let the COVID-19 pandemic get the better of you. You thought on your feet and you moved ahead and you've developed a very successful business model. Well done to you.
Thank you very much. And what I would say is that in January of this year, I decided to rewrite my business plan, because I would say that last year, from the end of March onwards, there was an element of troubleshooting rather than, accepting that this was my new company, the new style of my company. So it's been really, really interesting, and virtual is core to it, despite the fact that I do know that face-to-face and that experience is so important for speaking. but I've tried to incorporate the fact that now a lot of our communication will be virtual.
Yes, indeed. And I understand that the Inspire conference later this year is still going to be an online event. I saw on your website there, Susan, that you were very shy in school and in university. How did this impact you, and how did you overcome this issue?
Do you know, it did impact me. People often think, oh, it's okay for you. You've gone off and been an opera singer, performing in front of 3,000 people as a soloist, not in a chorus. And these are pretty scary things. It's all right for you. You do it every day. Well, actually, I am a proper introvert, but I've learned to be able to switch it on when I need to. But you're absolutely right. At school, I was very shy. I was quite anxious girl for a number of reasons. And even at university, I was very, very quiet. And speaking up in a tutorial when there were 3 other students was really quite something. And it was a few years later when I went back to the university town and met up with one of my tutors, because I was singing at Durham Cathedral as a soloist, and she said, I cannot believe what you're doing. You were so quiet at university. But actually, there are a number of things that I did. And one of them was that I went as a postgrad. My voice, for want of a better word, was discovered by a conductor when I was auditioning for a big chorus. And he said, you really should get your voice trained. It's very special. But and that took a lot getting round, because I hadn't ever been a soloist. I'd always been right at the back. And I'd been told by my family not to show off, to, always be in the background. But eventually I applied and went to music college on a scholarship. And one of the biggest things was accepting that it was okay to take centre stage, that it was okay to own that space. And yes, there's jostling going on, as you can imagine, in the opera world. Everybody's wanting to elbow you so that they can have that space, but that's another issue. The fact that you could step up and be centre stage, and for people to look at you, that was quite a big thing. And I would say that even when I got married, I found that quite a thing, that the focus was very much on me, which is amazing, isn't it? But I learned lots of techniques, and one of the virtual workshops that I do is actually on Manage Your Fear, Show Up with Confidence. And certainly for a couple of PSA groups, I have delivered this. And I delve into neuroscience because I've done a neuroscience course, and techniques that we use in the stage as well. And some practical things, not only giving yourself permission to be centre stage and to have a voice, but also some of the preparation things.
Yeah. And I think what you're saying there, Susan, is having a positive and can-do mindset is so important. And you don't have to be an extrovert to get up on a stage to speak or sing, because some of the world's most famous people actually are introverts, believe it or believe it not.
Yes.
And just touching on your opera singing career, I saw on your LinkedIn website, on your LinkedIn profile, that you were an award-winning international opera singer. How did this positively impact your life?
Well, if I were to look at that, go back to my 14-year-old self, thinking about me going there, she would never have believed that I would have done that. And I would also say that most of my teachers wouldn't believe it either, because I was so quiet and a little bit anxious. I would be very, very underestimated. And that's a message really to people, to try not to underestimate people that are quiet, because it might be that you just need to frame a conversation to give them the opportunity to express their opinions. And certainly in business meetings, that often happens. It's the loudest people that are heard, and some of the greatest pieces of advice and opinions are missed. But getting back to opera, I can't remember what it was that you asked me about the
So
opera.
I saw on your LinkedIn profile that you're an award-winning
Yes.
international opera singer. So how did that impact your life from a positive perspective?
Well, when you're in the midst of something like that, it is very easy to be just thinking about the next thing and the next thing that you're doing. Looking back, I can really be proud of what I achieved, particularly as I went as an older student to music college and didn't have that background of being a soloist from the age of 5. But I learnt an awful lot about preparation, showing up with in a professional way, being a good colleague, following up afterwards to say thank you. Guess what? A thank you card or even email makes a massive thing. And for people that are perhaps setting up businesses that are listening to this, there is, it's these little things that can really make a difference, because then people want to work with you. They know that you're a human being, that you respect them. I can't really say anything else, but hard work as well. I mean, I've always been a very hard worker, and certainly it was the case when I was a singer. I know one person bounded up to me once and said, "I don't know how it is that you get all this work. I mean, it's not as though you're any good." And I looked at her and said, "I work hard."
That's a great answer, Susan. And I'll touch on a couple of things you said there. Firstly, talent is one thing in life, but you won't go anywhere unless you have the application to back it up. And that's where hard work and effort is so important. And secondly, just one of my own stories, I distinctly remember a lecturer of mine saying to me many years ago when I was a young student, he said, "John, I can see you doing something great someday. If I was to go back and see that man today and tell him I'm a professional speaker, he probably would be astounded." But there you go. And like yourself, Susan, I was somewhat underestimated by my peers and colleagues in school and in college. But now I'm delighted to say, John Burns, professional speaker.
Well
For you,
done.
Susan. Thank you. Question for you, Susan. People often rush into saying yes. Why is it important to pause for a minute and have the courage to say no from time to time?
Wow, what a great question, because this year and even last year, I was challenging myself to say yes when sometimes no, I would have normally have said no. But it is worthwhile just taking a deep breath, because that yes might incorporate an awful lot of work. It might not lead anywhere. Even if the person is sort of saying, "Oh, well, there are people there that will buy your services," when you know that it's not that sort of audience with respect. One of the things that I do with speaking, even now, is that when it's one of those people that contacts me, I wrap it round and say, "I think it's fantastic what you're doing, but I only have a certain number of dates that I have available for charities or to do pro bono. And unfortunately, all of those dates have been taken up this year. And I wish you well. And if you want me to introduce somebody else, I'd be happy to do that." Because sometimes it might be somebody that's starting out, or it might be somebody just trying it on.
I understand what you're saying there, Susan. And that's a very good answer, because if you say yes to everything in life, you won't own your own life. People will run your life for you. They will have a lot more respect for you if you can say no, and say no assertively, then they
Yes.
understand that you have time that you need for yourself, for your family, for your own development, and to run your own business. That's how you say no, is to say no assertively.
Yes.
Have you anything else to say to the audience? How can the audience get in contact with you?
Well, my website is superstarcommunicator.com. I'm also on LinkedIn, and I'm always delighted to connect with people. There's actually only one Susan Heaton Wright because it's my old stage name. Also, I have my own podcast, which is called Superstar Communicator, and it's on all the main podcast platforms.
Great. And we'll put a link to your website and LinkedIn profile into this video.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome, Susan.
Also, just one other thing. I do have a lead magnet, which is the Superstar Communicator Checklist, 10 top tips to being a great superstar communicator. Is it possible to have that on the link?
We'll put a link.
Podcast?
We would indeed. We'll put a link to that lead magnet into this video for you.
Super.
You're very welcome, Susan. This concludes the gift show for today. I hope this interview has encouraged you to become a more confident person. To guide you on your journey, please download in the link below Susan's top 10 tips to becoming a superstar communicator. Before I bring on my next guest, if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to my channel. Thank you again for your support.